got to get on because we're desperately need to talk about bedbugs. There is an epidemic of bedbugs. They are crossing the Atlantic. Next time a friend bores you with some tedious story about great bargains bought on a quick dart to the Big Apple, you can comfort yourself with the thought that they might well have brought something else back too. Bedbugs are tough little critters. They feed off blood. They breed by something called traumatic insemination. And once they've made themselves at home, they are in no hurry to leave. David Cain goes into battle against the bugs every day as director of Bedbugs Limited. Ariel Levy is a journalist from New York who experienced an infestation in her own Manhattan flat. How did she first discover that she was not alone?
All right. So I was...
Deep breath.
I was on high alert because in Manhattan, it's the subject that everybody's talking about. So one morning, I was changing my sheets and I saw what looked like little poppy seeds on the mattress. And I went to brush them away, and they did not brush away. So it was clear to me that that was the bedbug poo. The thing that is very amusing to me is that it's a very secretive thing. Nobody likes to talk about having bedbugs. So I said it is almost like having an STD because you never know if someone living next door to you has it, and they do go migrate through the walls.
David, can I just say what a pleasure it is to interview and indeed to meet a man who's wearing leather trousers and a polo shirt inscribed with the legend bedbugs.co.uk. I never thought this moment would come, but welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
What are the signs of bedbugs?
Well, the first thing, there are many myths surrounding bedbugs. So we try to encourage people to look at the key core facts. And this is, if you have an infestation of bedbugs in your property or your place of work, and it can literally happen anywhere that people spend long periods of time stationary, you must look for 3 confirming signs. Either the live insects themselves, the fecal traces that are left behind by them, and these are like a black felt tip pen dab on a surface, or the cast off skins, because as they grow from juveniles towards adults, they effectively unzip their outer coat and leave a ghostly shell of a bedbug behind. And the bottom line is, the earlier you detect a problem, the easier it is to deal with.
I've just been distracted by your jar of bedbugs, which we've got resting on the table between us here.
Which I can't look at.
I know, you can't look.
I'm traumatised.
One has just moved at a rate of knots up this jar, and it's quite big.
Yeah.
You better just describe them, please.
Well, a lot of people describe them as about the size of an apple pip and mahogany brown in colour, which is true and technically accurate for
That's
adults.
an adult one, yeah. Okay.
But what happens is they hatch out of an egg which is about 1 to 2 millimetres across, looks like a miniature grain of rice and very pearlescent in colour, just about on the edge of most people's eyesight. And out of this comes a translucent nymph, or first instar bedbug, which is about 1 millimetre across. Now, normally you can hardly see these because of their sort of slight beigey, biscuity colour, but when they feed and fill up with blood, they become bright red, full of human blood. And as they shed their skin and mature, they take on a darker and darker mahogany colour. And invariably, when they're feeding, you can see either the human blood inside them or the digested blood.
Your arm, that's your left arm, I can see, has been marked. You've let those bedbugs feed on you, haven't you?
Well, yes, because I do a lot of research and development on bedbugs. I have to keep my colonies alive. And I've actually been touring talking about bedbugs in the States for about the last 16 days. So I came home to lots of jars of very, very hungry bedbugs.
Oh, David. But what happened? You actually sit in your home, you unscrew that jar.
No, I never unscrew the jar. In fact, if you'd like to see, I'll actually feed them in front of you.
No, I don't. I think
okay. Ariel can't deal with it.
I really can't.
Basically,
I'd like to see it, but anyway, go on.
I turn the jar upside down, and there is a very, very fine mesh on the top, and the bedbugs are actually trained to stick their stylets through the mesh, and then feed on me direct from there.
Is it true that women are bitten more frequently by bedbugs than men?
No. Male and female people are bitten generally at the same rate, but it seems to be that women have a higher response rate to the bites. Because if you're lying in...
Manifest them.
Yeah.
Well, so what happens?
Okay, if you're lying in bed with your partner, the bedbug really isn't that fussed whether it's going to bite you or your partner. In fact, you might both be bitten. But the reality is that you may be the only one who actually responds and comes up in a bite. Because lots of people, and it's about 70% of the population, can be fed on by a bedbug and don't actually have a typical bite response, like Ariel.
No, I didn't show the bite. I didn't have any. I mean, you don't have to get the welts. I didn't have any bites.
Well, this is why I always encourage the people to look for live samples, fecal traces and cast skins, because although they're feeding from you, and they were feeding from you, you were just not responding to the bites.
At which point Ariel hugs herself a little bit tighter. That's a horrifying thought for you,
Well,
isn't it?
because you don't know they're there. That's what's so crazy. It's not like a cockroach where you see it.
Can I just, I mean, people aren't going to like this idea, but are they really doing any harm?
Well, yes, with some people.
Why? What do they do?
In small numbers, they're not going to adversely affect your health. They're unpleasant, they're nasty to deal with, and they can be psychologically traumatising to people.
I can attest to that.
This is the place that you sleep and rest. It's your inner sanctum, it's your bed. They're being invaded by insects.
But there's millions of little microorganisms in our mattresses and on our sheets and in our hair and under our nails. I mean, if we started to worry about all of them, we'd be absolute wrecks, wouldn't we?
Very few of them actually feed on your blood.
And also, I think that one of the...
When you put it like that.
The other thing is that you do, if you don't treat the problem, it does get worse.
Is there anything you can do as a responsible householder to protect yourself from bedbugs?
Absolutely. And that starts off with understanding the problem. You get into the habit of always checking anywhere that you stay away from home. You examine the sheets, you examine the mattress, you examine the frame of the bed itself in any hotel that you stay in, because if you detect the problem before you sleep in the bed, you don't run the risk of taking it
How long
home.
can they live on you then?
Well, they invariably don't live on people, but they get associated with your bags and your luggage, and then they get carried home.
You've talked about hotels, David. What about in the house? You've got a bed, you've maybe had the bed all your married life, for example. What do you do now? Do you check the frame, and do you hoover the mattress? Does that help?
You have to, when you're stripping the sheets, inspect the piping on the top side of the mattress, vacuum clean it, turn the mattress over, inspect, vacuum. Lift the mattress off the bed and look through the actual frame of the bed. So look in the slats, look around the cracks and the crevices. Again.
Can I also say that once you vacuum it, you have to get rid of the bag after you vacuumed it, because otherwise they're living in the bag.
If you have bed bugs, yes, then you would be getting rid of the vacuum cleaner bag.
Bed bugs live on in your hoover bag.
They do.
Well, if there are bed bugs present in the room and they get sucked up into the vacuum cleaner, then theoretically, yes, they can live in the vacuum cleaner bag.
And crawl out.
And they will crawl out eventually.
Let's get to the nitty-gritty. I mean, they mate like bed bugs, presumably, do they? And breed like
They breed
rabbits?
literally in an exponential fashion. So your average infestation of bed bugs when they're introduced to a property is between 6 and 12. Within 90 days, you could be talking 6,000 to 12,000 bed bugs under optimal conditions.
In America, I know people are now increasingly upfront about it. David, I think you'd say that there was a bit of denial going on in the UK at the moment.
There's an awful lot of denial going on in the UK, and I think the problem in London is equal, possibly even slightly worse than the New York State.
And also in New York, one of the pest controllers that I dealt with said, well, the British have a higher tolerance for pests.
How dare he?
So
Outrageous slur.
which David he's kind of agreeing with me.
Are you in agreement with that?
That's a yes.
Because that's effectively saying we're a bit dirty.
No, not at all. I would never say that we're dirty. I think in terms of the emotional response that people have to the problem, you are more likely to get people who are psychologically distressed by bed bugs in America than you are in the UK.
David Cain of Bedbugs, or Bedbugs Limited. And you also heard from Ariel Levy, who's a New York journalist. I know that a lot of people think BBC presenters live high on the hog and get loads of freebies, and I can declare that I did get a free bedbug monitor as a result of doing that interview, so I've confessed to that. Now, please do contact the programme with any relevant bedbug experiences.